Good morning. We are going to talk on a new series here on these thoughts for the day about the one another's of Scripture. Now, there are a host of positive one another's. That is, things that you ought to do to one another. Love one another, encourage one another, be devoted to one another, on and on. There are also a number of negative one another's, things you are not to do. You're not to speak evil of one another. You're not supposed to grumble toward one another. You're not to envy one another or provoke one another. And we're going to talk about all those over a number of days. The intent of these is to give some really short thought for the days that are just zeroed in on our horizontal relationships. So I think we need to have just sort of an intro video first, and it kind of needs to focus on this idea. You and I have a responsibility at our core to rehearse the gospel to those around us. Now, what does that mean? In the gospel, you came bringing nothing, and God poured out his love for you. He poured out his forgiveness to you. He gave himself in sacrifice to you. The gospel is the single great act of otherness ever in history. That sits at the center of our lives, so that having received the gospel now, we have the responsibility and the opportunity both to live that out horizontally in our relationships with our neighbors, with our friends, with our family, even with our enemies. We have, in a sense, a mandate. And the mandate is that if God has renovated our life, and if we have received the gospel, then we are to rehearse that gospel to those around us, meaning we are to be conduits of love, conduits of forgiveness, conduits of grace, conduits of the kindness received. We have received from God in the gospel, and now we get to live that out and rehearse it, and so that we're not bitter towards others. Instead, we're forgiving, and we're not selfish toward others. Instead, we're loving one another. And much of our understanding of the reception of the gospel is kind of proven or demonstrated in how well we reflect and replicate the horizontal aspects of the gospel. And so as we talk about these one another's, I want you to always be thinking that you've received the gospel. Now, the one another's are the opportunity to rehearse the gospel in regard to each other. May the Lord bless you as we venture down for the next number of days on this subject of the one another's of Scripture.